What's up guys, it's Patricia from tarantulaheaven.com. If you're new here, please consider subscribing if you like learning about tarantulas. I post tarantula videos every single week on Tarantula Tuesday about my own spiders, about what I'm learning about spiders, and anything else that interests me about tarantulas. And if you guys have questions too, I usually try to honor those and make videos about that kind of stuff too. Today we're going to be talking about some of my top tips for new tarantula owners. I've made videos like this in the past, and I like to keep making new videos like this every now and then as new things come to my mind. There's a lot of things that sometimes when we've been in the hobby for a few years, we forget the things that helped us and the things that we learned that we didn't know when we first started. So I like making these little collection of tips videos for the newer ones. I hope that this is helpful. And I also hope that for those of you who are watching and are more seasoned, I hope it just reminds you of how far you've come and the progress that you've made in your journey. Anyway, before I get too far, this is my Chilean rose hare's new enclosure, or new-ish enclosure since I did it a few weeks ago. She is certainly hiding right now. She was over here in her little secret lair, but last time I checked, she was going up her little tunnel, so she might be coming out over here. I hope that she's coming towards the entrance. I hope she does that for you guys because she's beautiful. But anyway, this video is really just in the spirit of keeping this channel a really safe space for newer people getting into the hobby. I think anytime we get into something new, we're always a little bit afraid of being judged or being worried about what we don't know. So I hope that this is a beginner-friendly little list of tips. So one thing that I think is super important for newer tarantula owners to know, I get this question all the time in my emails, on Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere. And that is, do not freak out if your tarantula won't eat after you first get them. And it's honestly like one of the hardest ones to explain because I know that newer tarantula owners, and I was like this in the beginning too, are just so eager to make a good home for their new pet and just experience them and learn about them. And so it can be really hard to get this pet home and it just doesn't want to do anything. It doesn't want to eat, it doesn't want to move around, it just wants to hide. So that can be a little bit frustrating, but you know, I don't have anything else to say other than welcome to tarantula keeping. Having a pet tarantula is a bit different from having other pets, let me just say that. And what a lot of newer tarantula owners won't know is that one, tarantulas are very sensitive to stress, and they also don't know much about the molting process yet, so they really might be getting a tarantula that is coming into their home that is in pre-molt and is refusing food, which would be completely normal. And because tarantulas are so sensitive to stress and new environments, it's completely normal for them to refuse food for quite a while, maybe even a few weeks. My G. rosea Spidey in here, anytime I readjust something in her tank, whether, you know, I just got her home from the pet store, or I've cleaned her tank, or I've made a decor change, or I've put some water in the water dish and it overflowed onto the substrate. Anytime there's some sort of change in her tank, she gets weirded out. She senses it. She may not know what's going on, but she certainly gets a little bit reactive and wants to be left alone for a few days. And it is very likely that she will refuse food during that time. Many tarantulas are like that. Now there are some tarantulas and species that are very good eaters. They will eat no matter what. They're always ready to eat. Spidey's not one of them, and yours might not be one of them too. That is completely normal. Tarantulas are all different. Even if you get a species that's supposed to be a good eater, there are always differences in tarantulas. So just chill out. That's the best thing you can do as a new tarantula owner is, yes, set up their enclosure, take care of their basic needs, but once you get them into their enclosure, leave them alone. You can try to feed them, but they're probably not going to eat. And if they don't, just take the food out and leave them alone for a few days. The best thing you can do is really nothing. And you know, the more you bother them, which is something I think is really important for newer tarantula owners to know, is the longer it's going to take them to get settled in. You know, I unfortunately put Spidey through this, and this was before I understood how weird and introverted tarantulas were. I would try to hold her during the first few days. I was trying to feed her. I mean, this was just such a bad idea for both me and her. I didn't know how much risk I was putting the both of us when we were both so nervous about each other. So, I think that one of the best things you can do is just be patient. Let your tarantula get adjusted, let them settle in, and then maybe they will eat for you. Also, the second tip that I think is really important for newer tarantula owners is learn your tarantula's body language. I know this won't be a newsflash, but your tarantula can't talk to you the way that your cat or your dog can talk to you. But while they may not have those kind of communication skills of being able to vocalize what they're feeling or use facial expressions like my cat or a dog might be able to do, tarantulas certainly do have, and all animals do, have certain body cues that they can give us to let us know how they're feeling. A lot of newer tarantula owners will ask me what certain things mean, such as when their tarantula is rearing up and showing their fangs, or when their tarantula flips over, or when their tarantula is curling into themselves. So it's really important to know these things before getting a tarantula, because it is likely that your tarantula is going to be doing perhaps some of these things when you first get them. Your tarantula might be so scared, it might be doing a threat pose, or it might be curling into itself to try to hide and let you know that it's stressed out. It might kick hairs. And if you don't know any of those things, you're not going to be putting yourself in a great position to stay safe or keep your tarantula safe. And if you don't know the body language signals, then you are setting yourself up for a lot of misunderstandings between you and your tarantula. So some of the things that I think are really important for newer tarantulas to educate themselves on, and YouTube is a great place to educate yourself with. So are certain websites like Tom's Big Spiders. Even my channel and my website can be a resource, as well as my tarantula guide. I've definitely done a lot of work on tarantula body language, and even if you just look through my channel, there's tons of free content about tarantula body language and signs of stress and things like that. But some of the things that I think are really important for tarantulas just to start out with, like a general base of knowledge, is how to test your tarantula's temperament, learn what pre-molt and molting is and what that cycle is, learn what's normal, learn what defensive body signals such as threat poses and hair kicking are, learn how your tarantula shows signs of stress with their body, and learn what a death curl is. So those are just a few things off the top of my head that I think are very important to start you off, and you should kind of be familiar with those before you even get the tarantula. Another very important thing is that is that water is more important than food, and absolutely under no circumstances, no sponges. So some tarantulas fast, whether that's because of their species, like Spidey, who's a Chilean rosehair, will fast for months at a time for no reason, or because they're in their hibernation winter modes where they might have a slower metabolism, or because maybe they're in pre-molt and they're not eating. So tarantulas might fast for a variety of reasons, and it's normal for them to refuse food sometimes. However, they very much need water. Water is the thing that sustains them. Your tarantula can probably survive a long time without food if they had to. However, if they get dehydrated and don't have a water source, things are not going to be good for them. And you might say, I've never seen my tarantula drink water and I've been giving them water for months. I don't think they need it. Please don't take away their water. They are drinking it. It's probably just not when you're around. They are getting water from somewhere because tarantulas can't live without water. So definitely make sure that, above all, if your tarantula is not eating for a little while, don't sweat it, but just make sure they have a water dish. And to my other point, don't use a sponge. A lot of newer tarantula owners unfortunately get given bad information from pet stores who try to sell them sponges to put in the water dish because they think that their tarantula is going to drown or something like that in the water dish. Don't use sponges because sponges really can breed bacteria and they can be kind of dangerous. So you don't need a sponge in your tarantula's water dish. They do more harm than good. Another point I'd like to make for new tarantula owners is please don't hold your tarantulas. Of course, this is a personal choice. I, in the beginning, made choices to hold Spidey. And, I think the last time I held her was maybe 2 years ago or so. It's a personal choice, but this is just my opinion about it. Don't hold them unless you really have to. And if you do hold them, definitely make sure that you educate yourself about the proper way how to do this. What I recognized in my tarantula holding days is that holding them and handling them is very stressful. Every tarantula is different, but my tarantula, Spidey, is much happier when I don't bother her. Tarantulas are a bit different from cats and dogs is that they don't have that like reward response when it comes to interaction. So your cat or dog might really love being held and being petted, but your tarantulas don't really work like that. They don't have the emotional system, the nervous system to really get enjoyment from that. So understand that if you hold your tarantula, it's really mostly for you. And just be aware that this is how many mistakes happen with you and your tarantula. So you've got to educate yourself. You should know how to pick your tarantula up safely. You should know how to hold them safely, how to maneuver your hands safely, how to stay low to the ground so that your tarantula doesn't fall and hurt themselves if they happen to jump off your hand or something. So you've got to take a lot of safety precautions if you're going to make a decision like that. There's a lot of really great tutorials on YouTube about tarantula handling, so I will link some in the description below. I think they can be really helpful. I do think that regardless of whether you're going to handle your tarantula or not, just knowing the basics of how to handle a tarantula and like their body language, like I mentioned before, is really, really helpful because sometimes our tarantulas escape. Sometimes we're feeding them and they run out of the tank if you've got a really fast spider, and you might have to catch them. So you want to be aware of how to do that too. And that might be your introduction to tarantula handling, unfortunately. So be able to know those things in the back of your mind, even if you never plan on handling your tarantula. And the last thing is to take your time. Literally, everybody makes mistakes. I know that I've mentioned a lot of things, and maybe some of these things you weren't aware of at first, and so now you feel overwhelmed, but you have some time. This isn't a hobby that, and of course, some people do jump into it, but there's no rush. You can take your time. You can acquire as many or as little tarantulas as you want, and so you were in charge of that. And just know that we were all a beginner once. I certainly did not start out with the knowledge that I have now. Tarantula owners in Facebook groups and things like that kind of forget after a few years and several spiders later that they weren't just born with this information. So don't get discouraged. As with any hobby, there is some gatekeeping in this community, which can discourage a lot of newer tarantula owners and have them feeling intimidated or like they're doing it wrong. And I hope that you certainly just, if there are mistakes that you're making, just course correct and try again and learn from those mistakes. Something that I say to my therapy clients is that the first step to being good at something is being bad at something. You have to be willing to try. So do your research, ask for help, be open to feedback, and just be gentle with yourself. Nobody did tarantula keeping perfectly the first time. Even some of the, there's basically the Bible in this hobby is the Tarantula Keeping Guide, which was written many, many years ago. And that is regarded as the book for tarantula keeping. And there are several things in that book now that are outdated because we've learned more. So understand that this is a growing hobby and a developing hobby. And so we're still learning so much. So understand that you will make mistakes. We have all made mistakes. So don't lose sight of what this hobby is about. It is about having fun. It is about learning, admiring, and being fascinated by these creatures. And if you stick in it long enough and get past the uncomfortable feeling of being new, you will totally discover how rewarding this hobby can be and just how beautiful this community can be too. You're gonna meet a lot of really, really wonderful people, and hopefully you end up with a pet or pets that really, really enrich your life. So I hope that was helpful, especially to the newbies. Welcome to the hobby. I think that if you're watching this, I'm really glad that you've decided to educate yourself for a few minutes. And I will certainly link some resources below. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any tips for newer tarantula owners that I didn't mention, please leave them below. I think it's just so great to be able to collect these resources for those of us who need it. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for Tarantula Tuesday. Bye.